This is Gilbert Wood, better known around here as Gil. He's been waking up in paradise his whole life. Gil's parents settled here back in the 40s, and Gil's been here ever since. Some people call him Sir Mix-a-Lot or Master Mixer.
Oh, hey, Ronnie.
I call him about the nicest guy you could ever come across. Gil stays busy. He always says, a body at rest stays at rest. So Gil stays moving. He knows damn near everybody here in town. He also volunteered for the Marathon Fire Department, helping out where he could. And he sure knows what a pretty girl looks like, too. And he knows how to show 'em a good time. Yeah, old Gil's a regular Renaissance man. He's got so much energy, sometimes I wonder if he found some of his daddy's cocaine. I'll tell you a little more about that later. But he's like the Energizer Bunny. He just keeps going and going and going. The man don't stop. Yeah, finally, making me tired, Gil. Take a load off. Good man needs a good rest. Now back to Gil and his daddy's cocaine. You see, Herb had a nickname. It called Heavy Hand Herb, and he was the original cocaine cowboy. Yeah, he had a wild hair and a mean streak. He would take off on a moment's notice and fly to Mexico to go pick up his friends, Mary Jane and cocaine. Man, once when he was flying back, he got so high on cocaine that he threw a pill out of an airplane just because he didn't like his socks. Then he turned to the prostitutes and said, "You better look happy or I'll throw you out too." Hound Dog Herb always said, "Don't ever wear stupid socks, and you gotta always keep your pan strong."
Oh, no, that's not the way it went.
I'm just here to tell the facts, Gil. If you've got anything else you want to add, you're going to have to tell it yourself.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you a little history about my mom and dad. My mom, she came from a wealthy family in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, and when it was time for her to go to college, her parents took her to New York City where she could study art and music. And she was pretty much a girly girl. And she wasn't into those high society guys. She liked cowboys. So my dad, he worked for the government as a civil engineer. And one of his last projects that I know of was the government sent him down to the Florida Keys for the overseas highway project. And he always knew when he met his wife, he would quit his job as a civil engineer and move the Marathon. And when he wasn't working, he was a cowboy. He knew how to do rope tricks and he was good with guns. And so anyways, how my mom met my dad was, my dad was not working at the time, so he had joined this rodeo troupe and they were doing their show at Madison Square Garden. When my mom found out about it, she invited her girlfriend to go, and so they went to the rodeo, and my dad was out there doing his rope tricks, and my mom caught his eye and said, "You know what? I'm gonna lasso that cowboy," and the rest is history, and they got married. My mom, Jean Louise Williams, and Herbert Woods. They came and settled in Marathon in 1945. My dad, he loved the Keys because he loved the fishing, he loved the outdoors. The ocean hadn't been really beautiful back then. So when Dad brought Mom to the Keys, she instantly fell in love with the Keys for the same thing, the palm trees, the water, the fishing, the swimming. And the funny part with Mom in Marathon was when she was in New York, she was always dressing glamorously. And when she came down to the Keys, she never gave up that habit. She went fishing all dressed up. She would be boating all dressed up. There's a picture of my mom when she and Dad went fishing, and my mom caught a 3-foot barracuda in her stiletto heels, her cocktail outfit, her pearls, and her earrings all glamped up, going fishing.
A complete assortment of delicious candy and a full line of cigarettes. You've plenty of time, so visit the snack bar now.
Let's all go to the lobby. Let's all go to the lobby.
By about 1950, my dad and my mom came up with the idea that Marathon could use a movie theater. So in June of July of 1952, the Marathon Theater opened up. The first movie being shown was Battle Circus with Humphrey Bogart and June Allison. And the theater was a complete success, and I think the reason why was one of the few businesses that had air conditioning. So the theater was a huge success. They were drawing big crowds from all around at the Big Pine. They would show 2 movies a night, packed houses every night for both showings. So my dad came up with the idea that Marathon could probably also use a drive-in theater. So he bought 5 acres of land about 2 or 3 blocks due north from Sombrero Beach and started construction of the drive-in. During that construction time, my dad, his friend Captain Andy, and Red Hungate decided it'd be a good time to take a vacation and go to Cuernavaca, Mexico for a camping fishing trip. They boarded the plane in Marathon and took off for Cuernavaca, Mexico. They flew over to Dry Tortugas and heading west to Mexico. And when they were almost to their destination in western Mexico, they ran into engine trouble and had to make an emergency landing, or attempt to make an emergency landing. The natives thought that they were going to land safely, but unfortunately it was a crash landing, and all 3 perished. According to the Florida Keys keynoter, they were 3 of Marathon's foremost residences. So they had the service at the Marathon Community Church because I'm sure it was the biggest.
After Gil's daddy died, he kind of lost his head. Bought some roller skates. Roller skated all the way to Mongolia, where he lived with the tribe for some 4 years before he'd had to leave out of anger after they had to tell him he could never become a Mongoloid.
No, I was only 18 months when my dad died. Mongolia?
Yeah, I know. It was shocking to me too, Gil.
So my dad had passed. I was living with my mom, and that didn't last long because she had a nervous breakdown from my dad's death. From then on, my grandparents took me and raised me, And we stayed in Marathon until 1969 because they decided their house in Marathon was getting too big to handle. So they sold their house in Marathon and bought 5 acres in Tavernier with a small house that had about 550 square feet. So now we're living in Tavernier, and my grandparents loved that because Mom and Pop were close to their son, Uncle Dick, and their daughter-in-law, Aunt Joey, and my 3 cousins. And we were really close. So in 1970, my granddad Pop passed away. So me and my grandmom were living at the 5 acres, and we thought the best thing to do, and Uncle Dick and Aunt Joy agreed, would be moving with them. They were only about 2 blocks down, and they had a big enough house for us. And so me and my grandmom, we moved in with Aunt Joy and Uncle Dick and their kids, and I started going to College Shores High. And that lasted for about a year and a half, until one night, Aunt Joy and Uncle Dick called a meeting, and they said that they were divorcing, and the only thing they knew to do was to send me and my grandmom to my uncle and my aunt up in Memphis. Memphis. Yeah, I wasn't too crazy about living in Memphis, being away from the water, the fishing, the palm trees, and all that stuff. But then on my first day of school, and in homeroom, in walked the most beautiful girl I ever seen in my life, Holly Kirby. And I was like, wow, I'm liking Memphis now. Yeah, so in 1975, when it was time for college, even Holly Kirby couldn't keep me in Memphis. So I headed off to Tallahassee to go to college and study criminal law, as well as my sister was also at FSU already. The year is now 1976. It was Christmas break during college, so I drove down to Marathon to spend the Christmas holiday with my mother, and then ended up staying in Marathon, getting a job at the Buccaneer Lodge in Marathon. What was the Buccaneer is now Tranquility Bay. While I was at Buccaneer Lodge, I was continuing my college education, and so now it was time for finals, and my car broke down and I couldn't get down to take any of my finals, so I ended up flunking my classes and got all goose eggs on my report card. At the Buccaneer, through the years with promotions, I ended up practically running the whole lodge for Peter Baker as his purchasing agent, purchasing supplies for every department. About 10 years later, the bank moved in the property and told Peter and Shirley Baker, the owners, they had 3 days to vacate the property and foreclose on them on a bank scam. And so I left the Buccaneer in October of 1986. Well, after that, I started a lawn service that was quite successful. And later on, I got an offer that I could not refuse. My Uncle Paul Jones, who had the Texaco at US 1 and Sombrero Beach Road for years, asked me to take it over so he could retire. Years later, my lease ran out, and I was offered a big fat check not to renew it, so I didn't, and I went on to Home Depot. And so anyways, my mom passed shortly before her 92nd birthday up in Tallahassee at a nursing home. And as my sister Louise put it, she wanted to go to heaven in her heels. And in December of 2025, I retired from Home Depot.
Well, Gil then decided to travel to Egypt. He said he wanted to try his luck at smuggling some of that pure Egyptian hash.
Oh, no. That's not the way it ended. Just end it. The end.
All right, Gil. But I'm beginning to see that you just can't handle the truth.
And whenever you're ready, Gil.
Wait, stop.